Hi everybody, Luke Filmboss here, and today I will be reviewing the live-action adaptation of Disney's The Jungle Book. Oh, sorry, not that one. Now there we go. Just some quick thoughts on the movie. I really liked the cast, even though the characters themselves in the movie aren't memorable enough to remember their names even. But I really like what the actors did with their performances. The script just doesn't help them out very much. This wasn't a bad movie. Actually, I thought some of the stuff in this movie was really good. I thought it was well crafted, but there's just so many bad things in it, or like messy plot details that really just drag this movie down. So while it's not a bad movie, I really can't say it's a good movie either. So yeah, the story in this movie was all over the place. It juggled whether or not it wanted to be a story about a boy who was raised in the jungle, learning how to live in civilization, a romance/love triangle between two childhood friends and an evil soldier, a story about protecting animals from pointless and unjustified killing, or a horror movie about the dangers of the jungle, or just an action-adventure treasure hunt movie. This movie doesn't know what it wants to be. The whole thing about Shere Khan being some watchful protector of the jungle's laws in this movie, it didn't make any sense. It kind of ruined the whole idea of Shere Khan. There's a scene in the movie where Shere Khan has the chance to kill Mowgli and then doesn't kill Mowgli because he sees Mowgli as one of the jungle's creatures. It just completely ruins what made Shere Khan Shere Khan. He needs to be a villain, or at least a threat, and in this movie, he's not. He's honestly more of a hero in this movie, which is completely wrong. You just cannot do that with someone like Shere Khan. This movie seemed a lot more like Tarzan than it did The Jungle Book. This movie, the story is very similar to the animated Tarzan movie. But to be fair, this movie did come first. But it seemed like they were just trying to make Mowgli Tarzan in this movie. First off, they made him a young adult. They made him like his late teens to early 20s. And the end narration literally says Mowgli became the Lord of the Jungle, which is another name that Tarzan has been called in his movies and TV shows. And yes, this movie came first, but Tarzan just did it so much better. Finally, it's time to get into the juice of why this movie didn't work. The reason is because it's not a Disney movie. I mean, it is in a technical sense, but it just lacks the Disney magic that makes their films so enjoyable. Let's get into it. The first reason why this movie didn't work is because there was no animal characters. Yes, we get to see the animals that Mowgli grew up with, and they are all mentioned, at least most of them, by name, but there is no character to them. This movie doesn't build any character on the animals or their relationship with Mowgli. They're just animals that are there to be there. The most character development we get out of an animal in this movie is probably King Louie. We got some moments with Baloo where he attacks Mowgli's love interest for some reason, and when he takes a bullet for Mowgli to save Mowgli's life, and Baloo is at risk of dying, and the audience really doesn't care because we haven't established Baloo as a character. He's just Mowgli's pet bear that saved his life. And so, in the end, the audience could care less whether Baloo is about to die. To be honest, the movie should have just let Baloo die. Had Baloo died, the audience would have been left feeling like there was a point to his character in the movie. This movie has no problem with killing people off, so why not give Baloo a meaningful death rather than a forgettable recovery? Speaking of death, that leads us to our next point. Point number 2. This movie is way too dark to be a Disney movie. People are dying left and right. At the beginning, Shere Khan the tiger tears people to shreds, non-graphically of course, and one of the people dying being Mowgli's father. And in the third act, all of the villains all meet some grisly death, and it just doesn't feel like Disney to just shrug off death so commonly. Yes, Disney is no stranger to having big dramatic villain deaths or even hero deaths, but they never just take it for granted like they do in this movie. This movie can also get very mature at times. There are some scenes where the villain is torturing Mowgli, and even when Mowgli is starting to become civilized, people are treating him like an animal. There's also so much relational tension between the villain and Mowgli's love interest that it's just not the kind of movie that I want to sit with my family and watch. Had the movie stayed consistent, I could have accepted and even enjoyed the mature tones, but this movie has a few moments where it just tries to be a kiddish, family-friendly movie, which it's really not. And by the end of this movie, it just shrugs off all the deaths that happened. This movie kind of forgets that Mowgli and the girl ever were in love in the first place. There's no conclusion or payoff to anything that happened in this movie. So why didn't the ending of this movie work? Point number 3. The reason this movie's ending doesn't work, it's because this movie was not Disney's version of The Jungle Book. This version was very similar to the 1942 version, which was better than this movie. And this movie seems to be following that way too much. I think the 1942 version was very similar to the book, and then this movie copied that version, and so it became like a mix between the book and some of their own original ideas, but it still wasn't like a Disney idea. And I don't know why they tried sticking to the book so well. Disney is so good at taking stories and source material and reinventing them into something great with lovable, enjoyable, fun-filled characters and story. And this movie kind of abandons that and tries to stick way too close to the overall plain old story that we were given in the book and the 1942 version. And this movie honestly seems more like a remake of the 1942 version than a Disney reimagining of The Jungle Book. And then we get to the end of this movie, which pretends like it was a movie about Mowgli's journey to becoming Lord of the Jungle, when in reality, we just watched Mowgli learn how to adapt to modern civilization, fall in love, and lead the villain to death by Kaa. The biggest problem with this movie is that our characters really don't see any change. We see them and essentially where they started. Mowgli is now going to live out the rest of his life with his animals in the jungle, and his love interest is going to stay with civilization and live with them. Really, the only change we see is the fact that Mowgli learned how to speak English, so now he can teach the animals how to speak English, and we can see a truly Disney sequel to this movie. Wait, does a movie like that exist? I mean, the live-action 101 Dalmatians got a sequel. Did this movie get a sequel? No? Well, it's probably for the better. So, for the overall score, I give this film a 63% in quality. It wasn't a bad movie, but it wasn't a good movie either. And for the enjoyment, entertainment scale, I give this film a 45%. It really lacked the Disney magic that most Disney films have, and the story and tones were all over the place, making for a very unenjoyable film. So overall, this movie gets a 54%. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to help you be on the look for more videos from Luke Film Boss.